Hello, everyone. This is Marita, one who catches lightning, with the Path of Ish podcast, Walking with Our Shadow, where we share ancient indigenous teachings of remembrance, all so we can walk and learn how to walk a path of radical self-love. Okay, here we are. Hello, everyone. This is Marita, one who catches lightning, here with an amazing opportunity to sit in circleness with Lizz Huerta, who is a dreamer, a storyteller, a guide, all of the above and much, much more, an artist. And we're here to talk about creation stories, mythology, teaching, and how we can continue to dream the impossible dream. So welcome, Lizz. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. So your listeners know I'm Lizz Huerta. My pronouns are she, her, ella, and I'm born and raised on Kumeyaay land, colonizer name San Diego. That's where I'm currently right now.
Beautiful. So let's just dig into your creation story now that we know how to relate to you. So in your own words, Lizz, what is your creation story that has led you to where you are now, this amazing being, artist, and writer of The Lost Dreamer?
I have had a fascinating little charmed life in many ways. I was born and raised just a few miles from the Mexican-American border in Chula Vista, California, to Mexican and Puerto Rican parents. And I was raised very separate from a lot of the traditions of my ancestors, as my parents were Jehovah's Witnesses and raised us in that tradition until about adolescence. I never connected to the story of the belief system of the Jehovah's Witnesses. And I always felt there was something more. I was a very solitary kid. So I spent a lot of my time reading and in nature. And I would build these beautiful, complicated relationships with the natural world. I made friends with the trees and would talk to them. I made friends with the insects. We had a swimming pool, an above ground swimming pool growing up. And every morning I'd run out and try to save as many insects that had fallen into the pool. I talked to birds and I always felt there was something more. And when I was a teenager, I was looking for connection, much like Indir in the book, who loses essentially her religion. I had lost my religion, even though I didn't really adhere to it. So I was looking for connection, and I got into what we call alternative spirituality. And that just grew, well, what the colonizers called alternative spirituality. It's just spirituality for us. And probably in my mid-teens, I began keeping an altar to my ancestors. And I started a meditation practice in my early 20s, which I've had on and off for the last 20 years. Mostly on for the last 10. And I just became a storyteller, and it's been who I am. I'm kind of non-traditional in a lot of ways. I worked for my family's wrought iron business as a painter, college dropout, and just knew that my role as storyteller would come into fruition. You know, there's that saying, I don't chase, I attract. And that's what I did. I just kept sticking to the work nonstop, and I wrote as much as I could, and the opportunities came to me, and now The Lost Dreamer is in the world, and I am grateful beyond language.
It's so exciting, everything that you're talking about, and there's so many lessons in just your journey, the how to build a relationship, how Mother Nature and you, since you were young, created this dialogue. And we talk a lot about that. And a lot of people don't know how to build relationships with nature, and they get lost. You talking about storytelling and just really staying to the chop wood, carry water. And so let's talk a little bit about your ancestors. And, we talk about dreaming a lot in the book, but a lot of dreaming, as I also have been taught, is remembering. So, talk about your
Mm.
journey of remembering and remembering the ancestors, and as you remember, how you built relationship with them.
You know, on my Mexican side, I come from a lineage of dreamers. We, as old as memory, I have stories about the dreams of my grandmother, my aunts. We talked about dreams constantly. And my Mexican grandmother, Maria, she's from Sinaloa. She has had prophetic dreams her entire life where she would dream something and then it would happen to the point where it scared her
Mhm.
because she we were detribalized, you know, about two, three, well, I guess about three generations detribalized. So she had no idea what was going on and it scared her. My dad's sisters have the same ability to dream very intensely, and they've dreamt deaths and births. And that gift came to me as well. And I feel like it's a gift in our lineage, in our DNA somehow, to have this connection to that which is eternal and also within us. And I have been an intense dreamer my entire life. And I go to the same place every night when I dream. And I have a home there. I have friends there who don't exist in this dimension. And the lost dreamer is seated in a location from one of my dreams. There's this cove that I go to over and over again. And I go there probably monthly, and I have for 20, 25 years. And I can kind of tell what my emotional and spiritual state is by the state of that cove, what the
Mm.
waves look like, if it's crowded with people, if the water's polluted. And I wrote a scene about 12 years ago, and I thought, you know, I'm going to write the story of this cove because it keeps showing up. And that's where the character Saya showed up. And as soon as she showed up, she wouldn't stop telling me her story. And so I began writing it. And then the other character, Indir, showed up and she was like, hey, my story needs to be a part of this too. And I just kept following the story and trusting the story. And they wouldn't let me go. There were times I absolutely wanted to give up, but I felt that this book is very ancestrally informed, that my ancestors were like, you have to write this story. And there were countless times where I asked myself, am I the person to write the story? Am I worthy of writing the story? Can I do this story justice? But my dreams said yes. My meditations said yes. The prayers I had were answered in miraculous ways. My agent approached me. All these little miracles aligned so that this story could be birthed into the world. And I wake up sometimes and I'm like, how is this my life? And I'm just grateful. I really feel like my ancestors really wanted me to tell this story, that they had placed this gift of dreaming within our lineage so that it could reemerge through me and other descendants.
Beautiful. So, I love it. It seems you spend in the medicine wheel a lot of time in the north, the time of, dreams and endlessness with the ancestors as they plant the seeds of their stories and their memory. What a beautiful place to be. Not an easy place, but
Oh
definitely.
no, there's, you know, I think one of the things I learned through this process is there was a tremendous amount of underworld that I had to experience in order to tell this story. And in my meditations, I was depressed and I was scared and I was hurting, and I would talk to my ancestors and they would just, you know, the knowing that I received was like, this is part of the initiation
Mhm.
to become who you need to be in order to tell this story.
Mm. Now, I'd love to talk a little bit about, because you're a dreamer, your sense of time and space and dimension is a little bit different. And
Hmm.
for me, it sounds a lot like circleness, about sitting in circle. Can you
Hmm.
speak a little bit to that? How you don't kind of live in a linear line?
I mean, I feel like linear time is such a racket and we're stuck in it right now. And that, I mean, parts of us are stuck in it. I believe in divine time. I believe in sacred time. And I also know that I am in a physical body that experiences time in a different way. And I'm grateful for that because you know what you need time for? Cooking and eating. And those are two of my favorite things. But I do experience a lot of timelessness in my meditations and in my writing. And there are times where time will either contract or expand when I'm in creation mode, which is brilliant and beautiful. I have a friend, an incredible spiritual practitioner, and she and I are having a conversation about how she feels that time is an actual entity. And I was
Yeah,
like,
I
oh,
agree.
I want to explore that. That's fascinating. Maybe in some other fiction.
Mhm. Mm. Yeah, no, I love that. I love that so much. I can't wait to read that as well. So you love eating and cooking. So what do your ancestors like to eat? What do you offer them?
They love, of course, the cacao. There's always chocolate on my altar. And I have some beautiful cacao a friend gave me from their time in Nicaragua. And so that's on my altar. And usually, whatever I'm eating, I try to offer to the ancestors as well. I have rice, beans. There's a lot of my diet consists of rice and beans because it's beautiful food and I love it.
Yeah.
Fruit, I offer tequila. When I go to Mexico, I try to buy local liquor that they sell in Sinaloa and to bring it back to them. I also have dirt from the family homeland on my altar. I have the earth from the roots of the Guanacaste tree where my ancestors have been born for generations. Usually, whatever I'm eating, and then on the other muertos, I will go a little bit more elaborate and make food for ancestors I have known in this lifetime and make them their favorites.
Beautiful. I'll have to send you some of our cacao that we're making here ceremonially on Hawaii.
I
See
would
if they,
love that. Thank you.
yeah, I'm sure it also will. Well, I'll send some for your ancestors and I'll send some for you.
Perfect. Well, you didn't send some for me, it's for my ancestors anyway, because they live in
Exactly.
us. They live in us. I feel so much of what I do, I'm doing for my ancestors through their influence in me. So I am just the next version until I become an ancestor.
Yes, we are the future ancestors. I
Hmm.
like that. So you speak of relationship and a relationship to nature that not many people nourish. If someone is, and you can see it in your book, but again, for many people, this is a fantasy, but this is your reality.
Hmm.
So, what are simple things that people can do to start building a relationship with nature if they're brand new to the idea?
I mean, my initial instinct is get a house plant. Get a house plant and get to know that plant. Sit with it, either name it or learn its name, learn its cycles and patterns, how it likes light, how it likes to be fed, how it likes to be watered. And, I have so many plants in my home and they each have their own kind of personality, their own desires. And they let you know when they're not happy. And so that's a
Mhm.
really simple way just to kind of get to know a plant and then you can expand it. There is, in my neighborhood, there is this gigantic agave who I've been friends with for years. And I walk by her all the time and I drop a little tobacco or I give her some of my hair. And one day I went for a walk at a time of day that I usually don't go for a walk. And the person who lives in the home where she lives on the property was outside and I said, "Oh, I love you. I love this agave so much. She's beautiful. She's my friend. I talk to her every time I pass by." And he looked at me like there was something wrong with me. And I said, no, this is a powerful plant. You can feel how powerful she is. And he said, I was out here because I've been thinking about cutting her down, but
Mm,
now I'm not going to. And I almost feel like she sent me a message to
mm,
go on a walk on a time I usually go for a walk around sunset.
mhm,
And this was in the morning, and I never go for walks in the morning. And I feel that she sent me a message to say, come now, because
mm,
I can't have this conversation with this man, but you can.
mhm, mhm. Yes,
And
wow.
she's still there.
Oh, how beautiful. No, I'm glad that you listened. That's so important. Now, for other people, why would it be important for them? To develop relationships like this, right? We live in a Western society that places value on transactions. I feel like getting into a space like this is kind of a form of decolonization. What other value can people get out of creating relationships with nature?
Well, we are nature. We are part of the living world. And I think one of the largest wounds of colonization and the heteropatriarchal value systems that have been forced upon us for generations is that we have dominion over nature, that we have dominion over animals, that we are somehow greater than and not a part of. And when you live in a world that believes that, look at how wounded our earth is, our mother. Look how wounded she is because we think we are greater than her and not a part of her. So I think that when we build relationships with the natural world, when we realize that we are a part of her cycles and we are lacking in our care for her, and we need to get back to that. And I think building those relationships in small ways eventually, they spider web out into larger ways of relating to and being in connection with the natural world. And that way I'm hoping that we can heal her and in a lot of ways heal ourselves, because this idea that we are greater than nature is so damaging. And
Mhm,
so many people are so deeply unhappy because we live in a society that's not about experience, it's not about connection, it's not about play. We've been trained to live in a world that the more you get, the more value you have as a human. Where no, our relationships are what matter, not just with the natural world, but with others in our community and with ourselves. That wound exists in the lost dreamer. The king that comes in wants to change that connection and have dominion over instead of being a part of. And I think that's one of the greater wounds of the cis heteropatriarchal value system that we've been trained to believe is right.
beautiful. No, I love how you speak to all of these things. I want to dive into this heteropatriarchal society and why is what I call queer spirituality so important right now? It's been passed down through our ancestors, and why is it important in these days?
Well, I think one of the beautiful things about queerness is that you exist outside of the binaries. We exist in these complicated webs where, for so many generations, we've had to rely on each other for survival because visibility was often fatal within, colonization. Before that, gender was incredibly fluid,
Mhm.
connections were incredibly fluid, and that's been forced out of us. Well, forced out of a lot of people, not us, but that's been forced out of the world in a lot of ways. And it's sad, it's dangerous when you create these binaries that people are kind of forced to stick to by societal rules and norms. It creates violence, it creates unhappiness, it creates chaos in a way that's really, really harmful. I think queerness is sacred. I
Mm.
actually trip out when I hang out with people who aren't queer. I'm like, oh, do you know how great it is where I am? Do you know how great it is in my community and how beautiful it is and how loving and accepting and chaotic too? But that's part of the fun. And it's sacred, it's existing. It's a radical way of existing. And I think that I wouldn't want anything else. I couldn't.
Mm.
I would, if I had been born in another generation and I had to deny myself my identity and my existence, I can't imagine living with that kind of pain.
Yeah, no, we are fortunate that we are in these times, which are still a little, interesting out there for us.
They're really scary. They're really scary. I saw a tweet this morning about a man who he and his husband and their children were attacked on an Amtrak train
Oh, wow.
yesterday. And these violences, they reverberate. And in my hopes, I hope that it's, the death throes of patriarchy, that people are just getting really upset because I believe these next generations that are coming up behind us, I'm Gen X, these generations coming up behind us, they are so powerful and radical and smart in ways that I never could have been at their ages. I look at my nibblings who are young children under the age of 10, and when they're little and their understanding of gender and identity is so much bigger than mine was at that age.
Mhm.
So I'm hoping that the next generations will just be like, nah, this is who we are and you will love us.
Yeah, no, that is definitely our dream, isn't it?
Yeah.
As we continue to dream and remember, we've talked that a little bit about your creative process of birthing these ideas and these books as a dream. What else do you do? Are there other rituals or other ways that you walk that help you in this creative process? And this creative process for you is a long one, as you were explaining to me.
It is, but time is weird because I think it took me, 10 years to write the first draft of the book. And then I had to rewrite it in pandemic. And I was able to rewrite the entire book pretty quickly. But it was also, I'd laid a foundation for many years. And meditation is a huge part of my writing practice. I create a sensorial experience, first of all. I make sure that I have incense, sometimes copal, sometimes other incense burning, or a scented candle. I put on music that is soothing to me and beautiful, usually wordless music, a lot of chanting, shamanic drumming. I make sure I'm comfortable and that I'm hydrated. And I meditate. I sit with the story and I talk to the story
Mm.
and I talk to the characters and I say, okay, I'm here. I'm the storyteller you've chosen. What do you want? And then I listen and I'll sit in meditation. And sometimes it'll just be a flood of ideas where I have a pen next to me and I'll just write them down. And other times it's silence. And I know that the words will lead me. I just need to do the work and the words will lead me, which is really interesting because there are times where there's a character in the book, Dua, and she showed up one day and I was like, who is this person and why is she here? And I was like, well, she's here for a reason and I have to trust the reason. And she ends up being a key character at the end of the book. And I was like, oh, well, I'm glad I trusted you because I really like you and you turned out to be very important. So, and then when I finish writing, I kind of do a little release ritual, a lot of stretching. It's interesting because I worked physical labor as an iron painter for so many years. I didn't realize how much of my writing practice was tied to being physical.
Yeah.
And when I sold the book, and I didn't realize how much of that process was tied to my physical body and sweat and labor. So when I was rewriting the book during pandemic, I was like, why am I struggling with story? You know? And then I realized I would write much better after a long walk. And so I incorporated a lot of physical movement into my writing practice where when I write, there's a yoga mat set up in front of me, there's a kettlebell, and there's a small trampoline. And I'll write for 25 minutes. I do this thing called the Pomodoro technique where you write for 25 minutes, 5 minutes off, 25 minutes on. And during those 5 minute breaks, I would either do yoga, do kettlebell swings, or jump on my trampoline while listening to Bad Bunny. And it was so interesting that as soon as I got physical, as soon as I started sweating, the writing came.
Mhm. I love that. Whenever I teach classes and I give people breaks, I always tell them to do 10 push-ups.
Yeah. I mean,
Stretch.
my upper body strength is terrible, but I can do squats or something.
Exactly. You can definitely squat it out. That's what I'm doing these days.
Well, there's so much story in our body, right? Our bodies hold on to so much story. And so I think moving our bodies kind of allows those stories to release.
I love that it is true. Our stories are written in our bones, and so we have to move them to be able to rattle and hear the music. Let's talk about the importance of oral tradition and how you live with that mythology.
Mm. I come from a family of storytellers on both sides. And we get together. I mean, to this day, every Sunday I spend with my parents and my sisters, and we sit under the jacaranda tree in the front yard of the house I grew up in. And it's my favorite tree in the whole world. We're super, super close friends. And she was there the day I came home from the hospital 43 years ago when I was birthed into this world. And we sit under this jacaranda tree and we tell stories. And we tell the stories of our lives. We tell memories. We do chisme. We gossip. And we laugh. And we tell stories not just of ourselves, but of our ancestors and stories. And right now, my nibblings, my sister's kids, they're babies. They don't know many of the people who we're talking about, but they have their stories
Mhm.
and they have that sacred connection to them through story and through love. And I've been hearing stories. I remember my grandmother in Sinaloa telling me stories of our family that she heard from her grandparents. And there was a split. There was a split, I think, about a generation and a half or two generations before her, where there was a loss of our language, our ancestral language. So there was a split, but the desire and the impulse and the connection to story never ended. And stories, I'm working on a project right now where I'm doing a lot of research into the history of the land that is called Mexico. And, you think about all the books that were burned and the codices that were burned by the conquistadores. And you can erase the books, you can burn down the temples, you can kill people, but you can't kill story.
Mhm.
Story is passed down generationally, and story is medicine, and it
Mhm.
contains medicine, and it reminds us of our strengths. It reminds us of the strengths of our ancestors. There are lessons of how other people, have been harmed and how to not carry that harm in the future. And I think that those of us who are of this land, we are storytellers. I think all humans are storytellers, but so much of us, and from what I know of you too, your medicine came through story with your abuela, right? Making you the
Mhm.
cacao. And story is medicine, it's healing. It saves us, it sustains us, it carries us.
Yeah, story and song, keep us
Mm.
flowing to a rhythm of life. It's a beautiful way to be in relationship.
It is. I love it. I love story and I love song. My father was recently diagnosed with ALS and he can't play anymore. But my entire life, he was a
Mm-hmm.
singer and a guitarist. And I was in a mariachi band, and now I play the ukulele. I've taught myself just to play it for fun. And song is so powerful. I think that most of my short fiction is based on rancheras that I grew up listening to.
Are we going to get a serenade?
No, no serenata at this time. I might post one on TikTok one day.
Well, let me know. I'll join in if I know the song.
Excellent.
So as we continue to move with this medicine and the medicine of stories, there's so much medicine in the story of the lost dreamer. There's so much going on, but I always believe that there's like a core medicine, that holds everything. And so, in your own words, what is the core medicine of this book?
To trust the story,
Mm.
to trust the story that you're living, that there are times in our lives where, I mean, many times in our life, we can't understand the story we're living. And it's not until we can pan out or have, time away or distance from the story to know what it was, but to trust the story that you're living, even when it's hard, and that you can change it at any point as well.
Beautiful. Are you working on you said you're working on a few projects right now. Where is the dream?
I'm working on the sequel. The sequel to The Lost Dreamer is my main project right now. It's shifted in ways. It's a very different book than The Lost Dreamer. And the story is coming through in a very different way. It's pretty fascinating to me. I don't want to say it's cerebral, but it hits a different emotional space than The Lost Dreamer. The Lost Dreamer has so much power. Like both my characters, Saya and Indir, have so much power individually. And they do meet at the end of The Lost Dreamer and have to continue on a journey forward. But they both come from such different backgrounds. One comes from a tradition with her gift, and one has an instinctual relationship to her gift. And so that creates
Mhm.
tension. That creates a lot of tension between the two, as well as there's a lot of love in there too, because they have this connection through the dream. Which one is better? Somebody who's raised with traditions and protections and rituals around her gift, and someone who has an instinctual relationship with her gift. I think both relationships have their shadow sides. And
Mhm.
so writing that has it's been really exhausting emotionally. And I'm like, okay, I've been here before, and I know that sometimes when the story is coming out, it hurts.
Mhm. Well, and that's a perfect topic for right now. I feel like that's what people are discussing, back and forth. Is it training? Is it, just having instinct? I think it's a weaving of both, you know,
Hmm.
um, to be able to be in relationship to the gift. But again, there's no right or wrong.
There's no right or wrong. It's a difficult conversation because there's so many of us who were detribalized out, and that we had no control over that. We had no control over that. And yet we still have these instinctual gifts, and having that relationship to that gift isn't any less important or any less sacred if we don't have the traditions around it. And I think we receive the lessons and the medicine we need when we need them. I mean, that's been true for me.
Hmm.
And it's been interesting, and it's also like I know I'm on the right path because of how it has opened up before me in ways that I could not have comprehended. Not comprehended, but what's it called? Could not have imagined.
Hmm.
I would just laugh sometimes, be like, wow, what is my life? And then I always, my thing too, I feel like my ancestors are big tricksters and they have mad jokes that sometimes they will just pull some crap on me. I'm like, wow, y'all are laughing really hard. And then I laugh too because I'm like, yeah, thanks. Thanks for the lesson. Didn't need to show up that way, but I'm glad I made you laugh.
You're like, no cacao for you.
I know. Well, it's just, it's like I always say in my family of origin with my mom, my dad, and my sisters that our love language is talking crap. And I'm like, well, that's ancestral too, So, we're always playing jokes on each other and giving each other crap. And I'm like, yep, ancestors do that to me too. So, like, I literally, something will happen and I will just shout at my altar, really? And then I'll just crack up.
Yes, I've had many of those moments throughout my life.
You have to roll with it, or else you can't. Yeah, ancestors have mad jokes. I'm glad they have a sense of humor.
So, since you have such an amazing relationship and practice with your ancestors, there's a lot of people kind of coming to this notion of ancestors for the first time.
Hmm.
Do you have any stories to tell them of how they might begin a practice or start having a conversation?
I think it starts with intention, and I think one of the best ways of building intention is building an altar to have a sacred space that you dedicate. And you know the elements of ultra building, are available. You can find that a lot of places, and there are teachers you can work with. And just to build a space and to sit there and have a conversation. And you might feel very strange talking to your ancestors. Put something on there that symbolizes your ancestors. I have the earth from our homeland and a couple of other little symbols and figurines, and I just talk. I talk to them. I tell them about my day. I build a relationship, tell them what my fears are, and I make my offerings there. And I think just kind of setting that intention opens a doorway to connection.
Beautiful. Yes, I love altars because they also gather dust, and so they tell you if you
Hmm.
haven't been going over there and talking to
Yeah,
ancestors.
I have a couple of altars, and I looked at one the other day and I had forgotten to change the water on one of them for 2 days. And the water was so murky and I felt so bad. I was like, I'm so sorry. I didn't. I've been really busy. I forgot to change the water. And I was just like, I'm sorry about that. But the altar will let you know the plants will die, it'll get dusty. Sometimes if I'm not living well, my candles will just go out. Or I've had once when I was making some questionable choices in my personal life, I had a candle explode, a whole veladora just shattered on my altar. And I was like, well, that was subtle.
Yeah, you're like, okay.
I mean, like, I heard you. That was real subtle. Thanks for the shards of glass everywhere.
Oh my. Well, yeah, no, we have altars all around the house, and my wife put one up with a corn maiden who kept tapping me on the shoulder. And my wife was like, "What do you want? Why aren't you speaking to me?" And they're like, "Oh, we're just having fun. Marita hears everything. So we're just, playing a game." And I was like, "Oh, thanks. Thanks so much." Um, but yeah, altars are so important.
Yeah, I travel with one. I have a little travel altar whenever I go anywhere. I just like to have an altar near me as to set intention.
Yes, I always love being able to travel with an altar and create that space. And again, you can create an altar anywhere that you go. I've had long layovers, and I
Hmm.
just did a small altar, on my tennis shoes, put them together and found some rocks and things that were around. And so, again, you can create an altar anywhere for people that are out there listening, so you don't get overwhelmed by having to have the perfect altar or have it to look one way. I think you said it best. It's the intention of creating a space for yourself and to sit with those that you are building a relationship. So, my friend, it seems that relationship is your religion, and that's what has gotten you and the way that you've walked in your life. Is there anything that you want to share with people here in the circle about yourself, relationship, or how to walk this path?
I mean, I think what I share is, mostly in the story that I that came through me. I usually don't say, it's so hard to say I wrote this book. I always want to say the story came through me, and I was the one to deliver it. The lesson over and over again is to trust the story, even when it's hard. Build with the Saya character in the book. She comes from a very broken home and a lot of pain and a lot of abuse. And she finds her circle. She finds love through community who reflects back to her who she is and is able to heal that way and move in the world in different ways. So, find your circle, find your people, find those who will reflect your light back to you when you can't see it yourself.
Mm.
That's been my big lesson in the last few years, where my circle has intensified and become much smaller, because I am very specific about who I spend time and energy and love with. And I want it to be with those who are lights in this world. And together I mean, it sounds so cheesy. I sound like a Hallmark card, but together our lights shine brighter.
It is true, and it's been an honor to witness your light here on this podcast as you continue to make funny videos on TikTok with your animal friends.
Oh, my little squirrel! He's out. He's been jumping in the bird bath, which is. It's like, why are you in the bird bath?
Hey, it's getting you some views.
Yeah, so it's fine. I love my animal friends. They make me really happy. Right now it's spider season, so I have all sorts of spider friends hanging out in my plants, and I love spider. Love spider.
Perfect time to write with spider friends.
Exactly.
Weave the stories together.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to share circle and space with you. I love your work, so I'm so grateful to sit with you, and I hope that we get to sit in real life one day in circle.
Yes, we will make that happen, hopefully sooner than later. And until then, you will always be in my circle as I continue to read this amazing book, The Lost Dreamer, and sit with it and learn anew how to sit in relationship. Thank you, Liz. And I hope all of you get a chance to connect with Liz and their book and dream again. Once again, it is with deepest gratitude that I bow to you for joining me on this podcast, this episode, this circle, this plática, this meditation, this remembering. I hope that you have stayed curious. I hope to see you in the circle again next week. So make sure that you like or follow. Until then, may you be blessed with abundance of peace and radical self-love.